This is going to be a fun podcast. It's going to be a podcast that I've been looking forward to. I think that you're going to enjoy because we have an incredible lady today with us. Her name is Crystal Brown, and Crystal has done a little bit of everything. Like I said earlier, she's been on a trustee for colleges, and she has been on boards, and she gives and gives and gives. And I could go on and on and on. Currently serving as vice president of development for our local chamber, but I've learned that those intros are great and accomplishments are great, but if you really want to know a person, ask somebody that they work with, ask a colleague or somebody that knows them personally. And so I did, and I want to tell you what this person says about Crystal before she begins teaching us today and tells us her story. Here's what this person said. Crystal is an incredibly kind, compassionate wife and mother. She has an incredible servant's heart. I've seen Crystal effortlessly engage whole rooms of people from all different backgrounds and professions. She communicates a comprehensive vision for those she leads and follows through with that vision with excellence. She's a hard worker. She was never the person in the room who was too good to do anything or that something, quote, wasn't her job, end quote. She's always dug in and pulled whatever weight was needed in any situation. What a great, great testimony, Crystal. Thank you for being with us today. Welcome to Crossing the Line.
Oh, thank you, Larry, so much for the invitation and for the great work that you all are doing and you and your team.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that so much. And I have to ask you though, just getting started today, how are you? How are you doing?
I am doing well, doing very well. We have been able to navigate all the changes in the world just fine. And of course, we pray for protection and wellness every day. So we're doing very well.
That is awesome. And let's see now, you have a teenager, is that right?
I have a teenager, yes, 13. Just made 13.
That's awesome. So are we homeschooling or what are we doing?
Well, she is on the blended path. And so we have begun this school year virtually, which is going well so far. Of course, we ended the last year virtually. So she's acclimated to that method of teaching and learning very well. So so far, so good.
That is awesome. And I hope we get to talk about today because I happen to know you have 2 adult children, which is awesome.
And I do.
Then you have your 13-year-old.
That's right. Yeah. And lest we forget my 7-year-old granddaughter. She would never forgive me.
Goodness. No, we cannot forget your 7-year-old granddaughter. That is incredible. That's awesome. So Crystal, I wanna take a minute to get to know you. I wanna know that you are an accomplished leader. You certainly have given yourself to this community and to the state, winning awards for leadership and all kinds of things. And that's amazing. But I'm interested in some of the characteristics that propelled you to this place in your life. So if you don't mind, let's take a journey back for a moment. Let's journey to back when you were growing up. How did you grow up? Who were you as a young child?
Sure. Well, it begins with my parents. They grew up in South Alabama. I was actually born in Mobile, and shortly after they took part in what's known as the Great Migration North, obviously seeking better opportunities, economic and social, of course. And my childhood through the 10th grade, I lived in Waukegan, Illinois, and I was surrounded by family, immediate family, of course, extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, a great church family, wonderful neighbors. And so it was very loving, a very warm environment, very close knit, everyone helped each other. That's what I remember most.
We've lost some of that in today's society, haven't we? That large family, that large support system.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Fortunately.
Um, so my after through the 10th grade, my father worked for a company, actually Goodyear, and in 1979, all of that kind of changed. He had been able to avoid transferring because we wanted to stay where we were, in that
Right.
wonderful setting. But because of a plant closure, he had three options, and Decatur, Alabama was one of them. And at the time, I had a couple of grandparents that were still living, and that was the best choice. And so in 1979, after my 10th grade year
Oh,
in high school, we moved to Decatur, Alabama, and that was quite the culture shock and a very difficult time, obviously to be uprooted from everything that you know and love and friends and all that kind of thing. So, but we made it work. The unfortunate part was that when we moved here, it was a very racially tense time. I'll be honest about that. And most people probably are aware of a very nationally known trial that was going on. So that made it even more difficult. So, but my parents maintained that same expectation of course, completing high school, going on to college, becoming self sufficient, and just making sure that we didn't make excuses for not being successful and, keeping the goals in front of us and reaching them. So, and of course, be encouraged to be leaders all the way, and just embracing the fact that life comes with changes and you've got to learn to navigate those.
wow. I love your wisdom, Crystal, that your parents taught you that, yeah, this is hard, but we're not going to use this as an excuse. That is a great lesson for us all because the truth is, we don't understand what you had to go through. We being me as a white male and in a southern town, I don't know the struggles that you had coming in here, and yet your parents refused to allow that to stop you. And look what you've accomplished because of their value of we're leaders, and we're going to be leaders regardless of our environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So,
So that's amazing. That yeah, 1979 tough time, and you moved through that, and then you went on to graduate from college. And so tell us about that. Who were you as a college student, and tell us about where you met your husband and that kind of thing.
well, college was a great time. It was very instrumental in preparing me, for leadership. I pledged a sorority, which is a service sorority, and one of our missions is service to all mankind.
Hmm.
And I was a legacy, and that's important in my life. Um, and so my mom had pledged the same sorority, and so really instilled the need for service in us. We spent a lot of times in nursing homes and all kinds of things, serving others. So combined with the teachings of my parents and the experiences I had in college, just helping me to grow up, that set me on a path to servant leadership. And I just knew that that is how I wanted to live my life.
Wow. And so you're in the service sorority. You're continuing to give. You do that even to this day. But tell us about. We need to hear now. Where did you meet? Where did you meet your husband? How'd you fall in love?
Well, he and my mom were in a community wide gospel choir. And I'll never forget, he said something to my mom, may have hinted that he'd like to get to know me. And at the time, my mom said, Murphy, love you to death, but you're a little bit too old. And so, with me being on my way to college at 17, and him being 25, I think it was, that is quite the age gap at the time.
Yeah.
So, so she wasn't having that. And she actually worked with him in a program at Calhoun that prepared students to earn their GED and enter the workforce as well. So fast forward, I would come to know him later on after graduating, and we went out and got to know each other again. A lot of life happened in between, and we just somehow got to talking, and it just made sense. And he just seemed right for me. He challenged me, and that was big for me. So
I bet. I love it. Now now is your mom still alive? Is she still with us?
she is not. She is not. That probably was the most difficult period of my life, to be quite honest. She passed away at the age of 53,
Wow.
and that sudden death was, as I said, the most difficult time of my life. Although I was 28 and twice the age of my grandmother when she passed away, um, I felt completely lost. And, I had to go back to what I'd been taught. I was just beginning a new advertising career with the Decatur Daily. I had this 3-year-old daughter. I literally had two different choices I could make. I could retreat and withdraw, or just strive to become the woman that she intended me to be. So, and of course, my faith absolutely was my way forward, and the course that, of course, the support that my family provided. But absolutely, hands down, the most difficult time of my life.
Wow. So you had a choice in this time of loss. Even back then, you had a choice to make: either give in and give up, but you chose to strive and to move forward to be the woman that your mom you knew the woman that you knew your mom wanted you to be. That's the stuff of great leaders, Crystal. And I know I'm not underestimating the amount of difficulty that you walked through, but you've been through some struggles.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
and by the way, congratulations to Murphy. I don't know how he did it. Certainly outkicked the coverage, didn't he?
Well, he was persistent. I can tell you that, and it took that. So yeah,
We'll tell him he'll listen to this and get a chuckle out of that. I hope he's a wonderful.
yeah,
He's a
he
great guy.
will. Thank you.
But I want us to talk about that struggle a bit in the light of where we are today, in terms of um, racism that has existed for hundreds of years, but has been once again, brought to the forefront as well it should. Um, Talk to us about what you've gone through in the past few months in your family since the George Floyd tragedy, and even really even before. I think that has certainly shown light, much needed light on the subject of racism, but it's existed, obviously for a long time before that. But talk to us about how that's affected you. What are you doing to lead through that? That's yet another issue that you've had to navigate in your life. Talk to us a little bit about that.
It has, and I've had some interesting conversations with my children, just making sure they understand our history. But like my parents taught me to keep moving forward. We don't get stuck. We don't blame others because of history. We have an obligation to educate people about how we feel, about how it is still a challenge in 2020. Um, it's just it's about talking and having those conversations. And I've had some really in-depth conversations with my white friends and tried to shed light on how difficult it is when I have two nephews that from they're like sons to me. And so I've struggled with, you know, how it must feel for my brother to let them leave the house. One of them, they live in Georgia. One of them attended the University of Alabama and graduated a year and a half or 2 years ago, I guess, a year and a half ago. And that journey back and forth from Georgia to the university, just making sure he was prepared if he ever was stopped, what to do, those kinds of things. I have his brother that has been stopped for no reason at all, making sure he knew what to do, and he did. You know, but why that could happen to some young
Right.
man that was just law abiding, and so it shedding light on that and how that feels, and the conversations you have to have with your children versus the conversations that my friends that are not Black or you know, would have to have with their children is important, and it starts to make sense. Um, you know, it's just a difficult time, but it's a good time though to be having these conversations with um, and shedding light on what has never really gone away. It's
Right.
just been brought to the forefront again, and it's unfortunate that some of the tragedies like George Floyd have had to bring it up again, and make it so visible. But it's an opportunity to talk, and I think we can't talk enough. I think we have to listen with open ears, and open hearts and open minds, and just be willing to put ourselves have that true empathy, put ourselves in the position of trying to understand how it must feel, um, and
Yes.
you know, the way people approach their anger is disappointing. Honestly, sometimes I don't agree with a lot of that has gone on. You know, the looting and all of that. I don't agree with that, and most of us don't. But it's that rage and that frustration and that anger, I guess, that that's been bottled up for so long. You know, I don't know. I just don't understand. And so I have to help my friends understand that that's not the majority. The majority don't think that that's the path forward. You know, it begins with honest conversations and trying to help heal and help each other understand, um, our plight in this world,
Wow. Well, beautifully said. Well said, Crystal. And I think your parents, they just had it right when they told you we can't let excuses keep us from moving forward. And I think sometimes we look at what's going on in other cities or nationally, and people are angry. And maybe some people are not authentic. Maybe they have their own agenda. I don't know. But
absolutely.
we can't use that as an excuse to not talk about racism. I think the good people in America, uh, Black and white, want to come together and deal with this issue as racism as a whole. And I think polarization occurs when those people on the end, maybe they have their own agenda, maybe they're angry, but civil protests have always been a part of our country and always been. It's very important. Violence is not, but we can't let that steal that violence. We can allow it to steal the message. I think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
That's correct. And so we spent a lot of time here talking about the teachings of Martin Luther King, John Lewis, and people that have really impacted the world by civil disobedience, I guess you would call it, and nonviolent protest. Um, they really changed the world
Mm,
by just being respectful in their protest, and created an awareness that no matter who you are, you have to respect, what they did and the fact that they were willing to give their lives
That's right.
um, to make a difference. So,
Well, it from where I sit, it took a ton of courage to, as you said, change the world by being respectful. That's a much more difficult path than allowing your rage to, to dictate your behavior.
absolutely. Yeah.
So, Crystal, you being African American, leader, female, a woman, talk to us about some of the challenges that you have faced personally as as you continue to strive to lead, and you do it so beautifully and so humbly. You're amazing with that, but I know there's been struggles there. And talk to us a bit about what it's like to be a woman in leadership who happens to be African American as well, and all and a mom and a wife, and what are some of the struggles that you face?
Well, you're juggling a lot of balls in the air, obviously, when you try to give so much. But oftentimes you find you look around in the room and there's no one that looks like you. Um,
Hmm.
but you can't be afraid of that. You can't be afraid to be the first. You can't be afraid because there's someone that's watching you, always watching. That's one thing that drives me. And hopefully, I'm creating a pathway for others to follow behind me, and they won't have to look around in a room and be the only one that looks like them
Hmm.
in the room. That we are educating people that there is a need for diversity when you're selecting board members, when you're selecting employees, or whatever the situation
Yeah.
is, that you look around and you make sure that your boards, your workforce are reflective of the community that you live in, and that you're intentional about doing that.
And that's a constant struggle, isn't it?
It
That's been
is.
there for as long as you've been leading. I would guess.
It is. My dad he used to drag me into early morning chamber rooster breakfast meetings back when I was in college and home from during the summer, and I didn't understand why he would do that, and I'd think, why do you want me to go to these early morning breakfast meetings with, you know, um, but he was preparing me for where I am today.
Hmm.
And so I'm not afraid to be in a room and voice my opinion, my thought, even if there aren't people that don't look like me. I'm just hopeful that um, those those things that I say, those feelings that I express, are respected. There have been times when I felt like maybe they weren't so much, but I think after people get to know you and know your heart, that
Hmm.
there's a lot of change that has happened by being persistent and not being afraid to be the only one and to create a pathway for others.
Is the secret sauce, and I think you just said it, articulated it well. Getting to know you, is that kind of the secret sauce? Those the relationships that tend, once we build those relationships, they tend to break down the barriers and assumptions.
It is. It is. I think people are afraid of anything sometimes that's different than what they know. And, just building those relationships, allowing people to see that, I want the same things for my children and my family that you want for yours. I want the same thing for my Decatur Morgan County that you want, um, you know, and so it it comes with those conversations and allowing people to get to know you and see you doing the work.
Well, as you are out in the community, you're giving and serving and leading and leading over at the chamber and across the state. Where are we right now in the circles that you lead and work and serve? Give me from your perspective, because yours is the one that matters. You're in it. We can armchair quarterback and look at the situation from the outside, but you are living it and understand it. And where are we with this whole idea of equality? Now, for women, for African Americans, how are we doing?
It's still a work in progress, I would say. I think people are aware of the need, and that's, like you said, that's for women as well. We're very fortunate. When we look around Decatur, we see women leading major industrial facilities like ULA and GE. So, I had the opportunity to sit with some students from the University of Alabama in a room of women leading these facilities, and I was so proud to be in a room with these powerful female leaders that are so incredibly humble and can put everything in perspective. Family is still incredibly important, but they're able to manage and lead these, wonderful, successful companies. So we're doing better there. We still have some progress to make when it comes to making sure we're intentional about including in this area, including minorities. In positions of leadership. And I don't ever fail to remind people when I'm, have the opportunity to do so, let's make sure that, this board, this opportunity is reflective of, of our body, our city, our state, or whatever,
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So you are finding yourself now, when you are in a position of influence, to make sure that we are reflective of the people that we serve, and that looks very diverse. It doesn't look. It's not one color. It's very diverse, and you get a chance to influence that. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely, and then that's important because you need diversity in thinking, and so different thinking also creates such a better opportunity for us all. Um, Thinking, racial makeup of your boards, of your workforce, whatever, it just creates just wonderful opportunities for you to grow and to, just embrace what's coming.
Mm.
It's important.
So let me pick your brain. I need your wisdom here. When this conversation generally arises, and I've seen it in my life and in areas where I serve, so you come in and start talking about, let's make sure that we are diverse, let's make sure that we're reflective, and defensiveness begins to creep up its ugly head. What can we do about that? What is your advice on how do we help those walls of defensiveness to drop?
Well, you have to keep talking. You have to keep educating why it's important. And when I say diverse, I think it's just as important to make sure we have our younger generation
Mm,
represented as well. We have, our millennials are in the workforce, and they think totally different, as you know, than us baby boomers. But it's important to include them, and then the generation thereafter. And so, typically people will hear that, um, and when that creeps up, you just have to make sure you explain why it's important, because you're not always going to be around. Baby boomers, I can't remember the percentage, are retiring in huge numbers every day. So we've got to prepare our world, to be better, and
Mm,
to and we can't just we've got to continue to grow. And so we've got to prepare those coming up behind us. Um, and again, I think it's selfish, and I'll tell people that to think that the world, our place in the world, should continue to be what it's always been, and not grow and not look like the world.
mm,
You know.
mm. Love it. Such wisdom. So I, I could I could ask you questions and learn from you all day long, but we've got to probably turn this thing to a close. But I want to ask you this: as you think about this younger generation, as you think about these young leaders coming up, and these aspiring leaders, if you will, what are some tips you would say to them? What have you learned? What could you say to these young leaders who are entering our workforce now? What would you tell them that they need in order to be successful?
Well, I'd say that for me, legacy. I want to say that is what drives me. I want to leave this world better than because I was here.
Mm,
I absolutely want my life to matter, and that means serving others. So, again, that was instilled in me early on, and I continue to serve that way. Um, I would say to those coming behind, or upcoming leaders, be kind, be compassionate. Um, I've heard this many times: to be unclear is to be unkind. And I love that because I think people need clarity. I think they appreciate that. And so don't be afraid to be clear with people, but also be willing to embrace new ideas, new ways of thinking. Doesn't mean that, you have to change with everything, every wind that comes through, but be willing to listen. You've got to take care of yourself, obviously, physically and spiritually, and don't be afraid to say no because you can get overloaded. And I'm talking to myself now.
mhm.
Um, every waking minute of your life wasn't meant to be filled, right?
Right.
So,
Now you're stepping
but
on my toes.
I,
I'm sure you are for
I,
a lot of people.
yeah, yeah. The biggest thing for me is pray often,
Mm,
most especially for those that, you're surrounded with, and the situations that you're placed in, because you're placed in those situations for a reason. My son-in-law, we have a family text, and he does a testimony Tuesday. And yesterday he shared this, and I thought, that's perfect. Being a leader does not mean dominating; it means empowering people to do what they could have never imagined possible. And I think that's just perfect. I mean, that's what you do as a leader. So, um,
wow, that is all. Would you say that one more time so we could catch it?
being a leader does not mean dominating. It means empowering people to do what they would not have ever imagined possible.
Wow, what they would not have ever imagined possible. Beautiful words, Crystal Brown. You are an amazing leader, and I hope we can have another conversation again. I want us to continue. I feel like we're just kind of scratching the surface, getting your wisdom. But thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your heart. You truly are a leader who understands what it means to cross the line from her head to her heart, and you're certainly making a difference. And I know that I certainly appreciate all that you're doing, and I know that many others do as well. So thanks for taking a bit of time to be with us today.
I appreciate you, Larry. Thank you for the invitation again. It was a great opportunity.
We'll talk soon. Take care. Bye bye.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.